thought the light shows up there. So we're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Yeah. 1, 2. Yeah. Check. Just check the levels. Are you happy? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to stand at the podium and talk. Okay. Just give me a thumbs up if you're happy with
Cheers. Go ahead. It's fine. Okay, good morning. Good morning. Can we settle down, please, so we can start? Good afternoon, rather. Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Zaid Ibrahim. I'm the Urban 20 Sherpa representing the city of Johannesburg. So audible? All fine. Executive mayors from Johannesburg and Tshwane, Madam Speaker from Johannesburg, members of the Mayoral Committee, acting city manager, members of the executives of the respective administrations, members of the media, friends of cities such as Tshwane and Johannesburg, who are the co-hosts of the event. Welcome to today's pre-event media briefing on the Urban 20 Mayors Summit that's going to be taking place from the 12th to the 14th of September in the city of Johannesburg. Today's session essentially will do a number of things. We really want to align our facts, our story, our logistics, and of course the collective voice that we want to project towards the G20 as we head towards that Leaders Summit in November here. We arrive here in Johannesburg on the back of the purposeful U20 cycle that followed through from Brazil in 2024. Now, under Brazil's leadership in 2024, that was co-hosted by Rio de Janeiro and Sao Paulo, the Mayors Summit essentially was held in November, immediately preceding the G20 Leaders Summit. And that was an important precedent for direct city-to-leadership handovers. The Rio cycle essentially spotlighted issues from governance reform, poverty, climate action, and ambition, and reaffirmed the value of having mayors speak with one coordinated voice. On the 1st of December 2024, South Africa assumed the G20 presidency. For the first time, G20 is hosted on African soil, placing our cities and the urban agenda squarely in the global spotlight. Our national theme of solidarity, equality, and sustainability sets an inclusive tone that the U20 operationalizes at a city scale. Earlier this year, in March 2025, Johannesburg and Tshwane formally launched the Urban 2025 Mayors Cycle as joint co-chairs, signaling a metropolitan partnership and forged in implementation. In June, Tshwane hosted the first U20 Sherpa Summit and the African Mayors Assembly, shaping the draft recommendations which will now bring to conclusion in Johannesburg. And in a few days' time, we convene as mayors and city delegations to finalize the Urban 20 Communique, the document that carries the priorities of the G20 process. Allow me just to emphasize three practical objectives for this briefing. The first thing is just to confirm that all systems are go, that the program and logistics for the event that will be taking place, including the arrivals, the accreditations, the security, the transport arrangements, and the venue readiness are all in order so that every delegation experiences a seamless summit in Johannesburg. Those details will be made available on the website and other platforms as well. It's also important that we align on substance, that the Rio to Johannesburg handover that we experienced from November to where we are has matured several policy threads, such as jobs, inclusive growth, climate action, resilience, urban financing, and urban equity. And our task is to ensure that this communique is tight, implementable, and essentially ready for transmission to the finance and Sherpa tracks and other incorporated elements of the G20 Leaders Summit. Lastly, we also want to synchronize our external message. The U20 is a formal G20 engagement group. It is co-convened by C40 and the UCLG, and that status gives our outcomes weight. It's basically our narrative that must be clear, that must be disciplined, and must be evidence-led as we brief our media partners and the rest in the build-up to the G20 Leaders Summit in November. Colleagues, Johannesburg is ready. You will hear now from of Johannesburg, who will deliver a keynote address. It will be followed by Tshwane, who will also provide an input, and thereafter closing remarks will be provided by my co-Sherpa from the city of Tshwane. And that's essentially where this media briefing will take place. There will be a formal Q&A after the keynote events, but for now, let me hand over to the Executive Mayor of Johannesburg, who will essentially provide the signal for what Johannesburg will carry forward to the G20 event. Executive Mayor Mayoral, over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this opportunity and welcome. Where's the police? Oh, this one. One for the mics. Is it fine? Okay. Eh? Thank you for this opportunity. Is the mic okay? Oh, this one. I think it's this one. Yeah. Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity. Welcome to or maybe before I do that, to thank Nedbank for the opportunity to use their facilities as part of the collaboration between government and the private sector. So I'd like to thank them. They've availed their facility for free as part of their contribution to the city. Program Director, let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the Executive Mayor, who's the co-chair of the U20, Executive Mayor Nasipi Moya. Acknowledge once more, we traveled together to Brazil to go and receive the U20, and we have been busy with the sessions. We had our first session in June of the Sherpas, and now we are hosting the Mayoral Summit. Thank you once more, Mayor Nasipi Moya. They decided to give a different name in Brazil, but I won't tell you what they said. To members of the Mayoral Committee who are here that I've invited, both from Tshwane and from the city of Johannesburg, you are welcomed once again, MMCs, members of the Mayoral Committee who are responsible for different departments in the city, our acting city manager of the city of Johannesburg. We also invited the city manager of Tshwane. Unfortunately, he could not make it, but he have sent the representative through the Sherpa of Tshwane. And of course, esteemed members of the media, you are also welcomed. I'm just missing one person, Upi. There's one missing, because he always asks the wrong questions. Esteemed members of the media and distinguished guests, you are all welcomed. And of course, fellow citizens of Johannesburg who are here, and the entire senior management of the city of Johannesburg that is here. We are gathered here today not for an ordinary briefing, but for a decisive moment in the history of Johannesburg. I forgot to acknowledge the Speaker of Johannesburg, Councillor Margaret Arnolds. And we are gathered here today not for an ordinary briefing, but for a decisive moment in the history of Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane, and indeed South Africa. This pre-briefing session of the Urban 20 is more than a formality. It is the opening note in a global conversation. It is the space where we as cities prepare to take our rightful place at the center of the world's most powerful forum, the G20. It is significant because in 2025, South Africa holds the presidency of the G20, and for the first time in our democratic era, our nation will guide the world's premier platform for global economic and political cooperation. And within that larger frame, the U20, our platform as cities, gives Johannesburg and Tshwane a historic opportunity to remind the world that cities are not the margins of global governance. In fact, cities are are the beating heart of global governance. Consider this: today, over 55% of the world's population live in cities. By 2050, that figure will rise to nearly 70%, and cities already generate more than 80% of the global GDP, and they consume almost 2/3 of the world's energy. They are responsible for over 70% of carbon emissions, but they're also where innovation, creativity, and resilience thrive. If the G20 debates global financial sustainability, climate security, and equitable growth, it must acknowledge that this challenge will be won or lost in cities. When global leaders talk about climate change, they are talking about floods in Soweto, wildfires in Australia, or heat waves in Tokyo. When they talk about economic recovery, they're talking about whether the entrepreneurs in Maboneng, in the townships of Tshwane, or margins in Sao Paulo can thrive. And when they talk about inequality, they are really talking about housing in Mumbai, transit in New York, or safety in Johannesburg. So therefore, cities are the world. And so the U20 is not a side event, it is the front line. So Johannesburg's role, therefore, is to host this important event jointly with the city of Tshwane. We've always said Johannesburg is the city of firsts, the city where the world's largest gold rush birthed a modern metropolis, the city where apartheid's harsh controls were confronted by humanity's strongest resistance, the city where the post-apartheid democratic project has been tested in all its complexity, contradictions, and promise. So therefore today, Johannesburg stands again at the forefront as we are hosting the 2025 U20 Mayoral Summit from the 12th to the 14th of September, and we welcome not just delegates but the world itself. And we do so proudly alongside our partners, the city of Tshwane. Together we symbolize the dual energy of South African cities and Johannesburg as the continental hub of commerce and diversity, Tshwane as the administrative and diplomatic capital of our nation. This partnership is more than ceremonial. It is symbolic of how South Africa sees itself or sees its role in the world, bridging business and governance, bringing together citizens and states, driving both local innovation and global cooperation. So hosting is an opportunity, and we believe that hosting this event as Johannesburg is not simply about prestige, it is about possibility. When mayors and city leaders from across the G20 arrive here, we are not only exchanging ideas, we are creating networks of action. Johannesburg becomes the testing ground, the platform where global commitments can be piloted, adapted, and implemented in real urban settings. Program Director, why does this matter? It matters because challenges like financing, climate resilience, social equity, and digital transformation cannot be solved in isolation. They demand collaboration across borders, access to shared knowledge, and the courage to scale solutions. Hosting the U20 allows us to put our own realities on the table, our successes and our struggles, and invite the world to co-create pathways that can work both in Johannesburg, Tshwane, and beyond. It gives us the unique chance to demonstrate in practice that local governments are not just implementers of policy handed down from above, we are innovators, problem solvers, and catalysts of change. And by hosting, Johannesburg can showcase working models, whether it is township economy revitalization, inner city regeneration, or climate-smart infrastructure, and match them with global expertise and funding opportunities. Therefore, in short, this summit is not just talk. It is the bridge between our local challenges and global solutions. The U20 agenda has 4 pillars for cities and the G20. So we will put before the G20, when the U20 meets in Johannesburg, 4 urgent imperatives to find our agenda. And these imperatives will therefore be delivered at the G20 in November 2025. And this includes 1, economic opportunity and financing, climate action and urban resilience, 3, social inclusion and equity, 4, digital transformation and innovation. So those are the key 4 pillars that will therefore be presented to the G20 by the leader of the U20. A call to action is the responsibility of ourselves, and we are making this call to action. Colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, today's briefing is not just preparation, it is also mobilization. The journalists here today are not merely reporting, you are amplifiers of the voice of cities. When you carry our story into homes, newspapers and screens, you help shape how the G20 hears us as municipalities. We must remember the G20 is listening, but it is also distracted by wars, by competing economies, by crisis of legitimacy. Our job is to ensure that the voice of cities cuts through, that the agency of climate action, the necessity of urban financing, and the moral imperative of equity cannot be ignored. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like therefore to raise the following. As Johannesburg, our vision is simple but bold, to position cities as the decisive actors of the 21st century. We are not secondary to national governments. We are co-architects of humanity's future. The roads, the lights, the housing, the policing, the public spaces, these are the arenas in which democracy is felt, where development is real, where dignity is either upheld or denied. And this is why hosting the U20 is so powerful. It gives us a stage to show the world, not in theory, but in lived experience, how cities can transform when they are resourced, supported, and heard. It allows Johannesburg to step forward, not just as a city of challenges, but as a city of solutions. If the G20 wants legitimacy, it must look to the U20. If the G20 wants solutions, it must look to the cities. In closing, let me leave you with this thought. Johannesburg is not simply a host. Johannesburg is a messenger. We carry the voices of cities of the global south, the cities of Lagos, Nairobi, Mumbai, and Jakarta. We bring into the G20 a reality too often overlooked, that the majority of the world's people live in cities of the developing world, where resilience is tested daily and where innovation often arises out of necessity. The U20 is therefore not just about mayors talking to each other. It is about cities claiming their rightful place in shaping the destiny of nations. It is about showing that local governance is global governance. Let us unite behind this vision. Let us seize these opportunities. Let us ensure that when the U20 Summit concludes in Johannesburg this September, the world will say, here in South Africa, cities rose to the occasion. Here in Johannesburg and Tshwane, here the voices of the urban world reshaped the agenda of the U20 and the G20. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Mayor. I'd like to call upon the Executive Mayor of Tshwane, Dr. Moya, to provide us with her address as well. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Let me acknowledge the Executive Mayor, Mayor Morero, the Speaker of Council of the City of Johannesburg, the MMCs, Acting City Manager, and all the officials that are here, acting city manager from the city of Tshwane, and your team. Want to acknowledge the members of the media who have graced this occasion. Thank you so much for your presence and for helping us to amplify the voice of the cities. But most importantly, our fellow South Africans, who, Mayor Morero, we've had a privilege and an honor that as we enter the second 30 years of our democracy, when people are looking at the events that took place, we would be listed as the people who were entrusted to carry the hopes and dreams of not only the residents that we have the honor to serve, but also of South Africans and African residents. So I find this to be a very, when you feel honored to have a responsibility, and I think between ourselves as the city of Tshwane and the city of Johannesburg, Mayor Morero, we have shown what we can do when government work together, something that our fellow citizens are looking for. But before I start, Mayor Morero, you've done something quite awesome. You got educated. There's many ways to lead people, Mayor Morero. Sometimes you just have to do it, and that's how you lead people. So thank you so much for leading us in that, to show that leaders must be educated so we can inspire the generation that will come after us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us as we prepare for the U20 Mayors Summit here in the city of Johannesburg. This week marks a turning point. For the first time, the U20 is taking place on an African soil. This is more than a milestone in the calendar. It is the culmination of determined advocacy to claim Africa's place in reshaping global governance. It is the moment when African perspectives, shaped by resilience and guided by Ubuntu, move to the center of the global conversation. That journey began in Rio last year, where the city of Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane were entrusted with co-chairing this U20 cycle under the South African G20 presidency. It continued in June at the Sherpa meeting and the African Mayors Assemble in Tshwane, where more than 40 mayors spoke with one voice. Together, we made it clear that Africa is not a bystander. Africa is a driver for solutions. I take this responsibility personally. Growing up in a rural area, I saw both hardships and solidarity. I know what it means when communities feel left out of decisions made far away from them. This is why I care deeply about giving Africa and the Global South a stronger platform. Our people cannot wait for promises, Mayor Morero. They need action, and they can feel an action that they can feel in their daily lives. As the executive mayor of South Africa's capital city, I see these challenges every day, ladies and gentlemen. Rapid urbanization, stretched infrastructure, unemployment among the young, and deep inequality. They are not just abstract statisticians in our cities. They are lived realities for millions of our residents. These are the same struggles facing African cities across the continent. Unlike in much of the global north, where the focus is on managing aging populations or upgrading established infrastructure, in the global south, our cities are growing faster than our resources can keep up. That makes access to finance and fair recognition of our role in global governance an urgent priority, not a distant aspiration. The communique that will be discussed, that was drafted in Tshwane in June and will be finalized this week, is a blueprint for that action. It called for 3 essential shifts. First, genuine multi-level governance. Mayors must have a seat at the global table because we are the ones who carry national commitments into daily life. We are the ones implementing climate goals, managing rapid urbanization, providing water and electricity and housing, and keeping communities safe. When cities are excluded, strategies remain abstract. When cities are included, policies take root in the streets, neighborhoods, and townships where people live. Second, strengthened multilateral cooperation. The world is living through overlapping crises, climate shocks, deepening inequality, conflict, disinformation, and instability. These crises converge in our cities. We see the consequences in vulnerable households, informal settlements, and overstretched local systems. This is why the communique calls on G20 leaders to defend democratic values and to rebuild international cooperation. Our destinies are shared, and so too must be our solutions. African cities cannot be left to carry the burden alone. Third, financial empowerment. This is the most urgent priority, as Mayor Morero was also saying. Cities cannot build infrastructure, create jobs, or protect residents from climate shocks without predictable and affordable finance. For African cities, this is a daily reality. We host fast-growing populations, yet less than 4% of global climate finance reaches our cities. That figure is not only unsustainable, it is unjust. The communique calls for a reformed global financial system that unlocks capital for the global south. Without this, our people remain trapped by promises that cannot be delivered. With it, we turn resilience, jobs, and equity into realities that people can touch and feel in their lives. From this summit in Johannesburg to the G20 Leaders Summit later this year, and to COP30 beyond, our message will remain the same. Cities are not junior partners in the global agenda. We are the implementers. We are the places where climate goals, housing commitments, and social protection must be made real. And Africa's cities are ready to lead if we are empowered to do so. This is the moment to ensure that the African voice is not an afterthought, but a central part of global governance. It is the moment to move from declarations to delivery. For me, as an African mayor, this is personal. I see the struggles of my residents every day. I know the weight of unmet needs and unkept promises, but I also see resilience, ingenuity, and hope in my people. This is what Africa brings to the table. This summit gives us the chance to carry that hope into the G20 and COP30, Mayor Morero. It is our chance to make sure that the voice of the Global South is not lost as the debate moves forward. This week in Johannesburg, we can mark a landmark change. If we succeed, the commitments made in global halls will no longer feel distant. They will be lived in our streets, in our homes, in our neighborhoods. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just before we close and get to the closing remarks, I think it's important to also talk about who will be attending and who will be coming to the U20 Summit. There'll be a number of cities, mayors, delegations, organizations as well, who will be part of it. But it's important to name a few. The executive director of the UN Habitat will join us later this week. We'll have delegations and leaders from cities like Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta, Rotterdam, Mumbai, Ahmedabad, Montreal, Sao Paulo, Rio. There'll also be Accra in Ghana, Freetown. Some of our South African cities will also be joining the event. So there's a number of cities that will be here. I haven't named each and every one of them, but it's also important to put that into perspective as well in terms of how this voice will be carried off, even with some of the observer cities who are not usually part of the U20 process, but are part of championing the same agenda as well. So I'd just like to now, before we formally move to the Q&A, the closing remarks by my fellow U20 Sherpa from the city of Tshwane, the Chief Operations Officer, Vuyo Zitumani, who will basically do the closing remarks. Thanks.
Protocol.
At least I'm not physically challenged. We can lift this up. Protocol has been observed. I can simply say thank you, Enkosi, Kialibua, and close this session. But I would be doing an injustice for failing to publicly acknowledge those who have made this event a reality and a success it is. Having 120 media houses to spread the message and to ensure inclusion of our citizens is worth the recognition and appreciation. Program Director, we have come a long way since the baton was handed over to us, to our two co-chairs led by the Executive Mayor Morero and Executive Mayor Moya. And I can safely say with confidence that we're at the pinnacle of this U20 initiative. As confirmed by the participants who attended the first leg of the U20 Summit in the city of Tshwane, and especially the global participants. The South African leg was the biggest in terms of the number of participants. It was also the best in terms of the content and the hospitality that was provided. And I have no doubt in my mind that the last leg, which is going to be hosted by the city of Johannesburg, is going to be the best. Program Director, let me thank you for organizing and directing the media briefing so well, whilst not forgetting the team that is working behind the scenes. The fact that we're able to leverage 120 media houses in one single event is very significant, and that will have a wide reach indeed and to the most remote parts of our cities. Let me thank our executive mayors respectively, supported by their MMCs and the councillors and officials for the conviction and the passion that they have displayed in taking over the responsibility of hosting U20. And for the first time in this country, and probably the last time in our lifetime, judging the age that is sitting in this room. You are indeed giving effect to the narrative that has been shared by both mayors that cities are critical catalysts for global change. Hence, we have come this far. To our partners, the media houses that are here, we have invited the media deliberately to ensure widespread communication on this initiative, but mainly to ensure inclusive public engagement and understanding. And it is my wish and hope that during the question and answer, you won't be asking us about street lights and potholes, because this session is not about that. And let me thank Nedbank for hosting us and the warm hospitality that they've displayed in the entire value chain, from the parking and being ushered here in this room. I will also extend the same word of appreciation to our sponsors that I will not mention in name, for the contribution that they've made in ensuring that U20 becomes a success. I thank you all.
Okay, thank you very much. That basically closes off the formal proceedings from the sort of pre-briefing. I'd like to now call upon the executive mayors' respective spokespersons to now deal with the Q&A, and that will basically conclude all proceedings from there. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, colleagues. I am Samgelo Mkopozi, for those who don't know you, who don't know me. I have the pleasure of serving as the mayoral spokesperson for the executive mayor and her mayoral executive. And to my side here is Katu, who does the same for Mayor Data Morero. So how this will work, colleagues, as you know, we will have a series, a round of questions. You will raise your hand, indicate from which media house you're from, introduce yourself. You will then direct the question to the relevant person so that you can get the answer from the relevant politician or official that you want to extract an answer from. With that said, we will do, given that time and the various mayors have important engagements to attend. We will do 2 rounds of questions, and thereafter we will do a brief session with one-on-ones either at the back there or outside on the terrace there. With that said, I am calling on the first round of questions. We'll take one here from Sisanda Mbolekwa. Khaulelo there. Is there anyone behind the cameras there? Mbalente. Then we'll take you as number 3, and we'll take those 3 questions first, and then over to you, Katu. Thanks.
Yeah, yes, you can.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Sisanda Mbolekwa from the Sunday Times. This question was asked in Tshwane during the first leg, so I'm only assuming that it's fair to ask it in Johannesburg as well. Mayor Mayoral, we've seen the introduction and continuation of your high-impact accelerated service delivery program. Are you happy with the state of Johannesburg that you'll be presenting to the mayors that will come and attend the summit this starting on Friday? And Mayor Moya, what are some of the lessons drawn from the first leg of the U20 Summit hosted in Tshwane, going into this final event that will mark your joint co-hosting of this landmark event on African soil? Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm however Mayoral from UFM. Mayor Morero, without talking necessarily about potholes, but being a host city got you into a particular care level in terms of service delivery, specifically these visible problems of potholes, last street lights. Just give us an indication of the kind of momentum that the city has gotten into now as a result of the responsibility of hosting this summit, and how do you plan on sustaining that momentum?
Valente Tertua for SABC News. Now, to both the mayors, I think you've done a great job in terms of explaining the role of municipalities and the fact that they are implementing agents of global as well as national agendas or policies that have been set up. With regards to the issue of Africa and growing at a rate that is that outpaces the rate at which infrastructure can be built up. What solutions would you then put forward, given the fact that we have had an issue and a challenge of urban decay and illegally occupied buildings, and particularly the city of Johannesburg and the city of Tshwane seem to attract a lot of people in terms of economic migrants, all those looking for economic opportunities, and unfortunately unemployment is still very high. What do you then do to ensure that the city of Johannesburg and Tshwane continue to play a very pivotal role in terms of ensuring that they create a conducive environment for business to operate and thrive, and for individuals to find employment? Thank you.
AM podium, yes, please.
I thought now that Alpha is not here, I won't have problems. Let me respond in this fashion on the issue in terms of the, which I think Khaugelo and Sisanda, it's almost similar in terms of one service delivery and infrastructure program. And I'll respond in this manner. Part of the discussion at the U20 is actually on infrastructure financing of municipalities, because part of the challenge that we have is really about urbanization that is not controlled, that is growing rapidly, which contributes towards illegal connections into our infrastructure, and generally also understanding the current climate economically, which also affects our ability to collect revenue for us to address these issues. So all these issues cannot be addressed in isolation. So it's important that we continue to accommodate them. Yes, we took a decision when we came in government in 2023 that part of our focus is on infrastructure, revitalization, renewal and refurbishment, which also included a core program was the revitalization of the inner city of Johannesburg. So that meant programs that we are doing now. That is why we went out to raise capital. As you know, that we're also refurbishing our water reservoirs because our water infrastructure is in dire strain and requires us to intervene. I think we have also raised about 500 million just to address issues on the reservoirs. It's not sufficient. We've got about 45 of our reservoirs that are no longer in good state. They're 50 years and older. Therefore, they require refurbishment. So we are focused on them. In this financial year, I think we have made a commitment of about 24 of the 45 to try and bring them to a good state of functioning. So that's what we are doing. So it is also important to note that in terms of service delivery, high impact program, the idea is to bring all entities and departments at one in a particular area so that we can say, these are the failures in service delivery. Let us all go in and address them. It requires also commitment. It requires leadership and dedication from our current administration, which I think they've been doing so well. And also the workforce, because you can't have the workforce which is supposed to clean a park and they don't clean the park, they stay and sleep there. You want them to be working. So this high impact has also been helping us to motivate the workers, the workforce in the city about the importance of addressing issues around service delivery failures. There are challenges and we continue to address those challenges. I think we have been seeing that every week almost we are in particular wards or in particular regions with a clear intention that we are unlocking service delivery in those wards. You can drive tonight and you'll see that we have done progress in terms of addressing street lights throughout Johannesburg, but the vandalism issue remains a key problem that we are faced with, and we need to address that issue quite urgently because it does affect our infrastructure constantly. In terms of the illegal migrants, I think we have taken a view that those that are illegal must leave the country. We are working with Home Affairs, we are working with the SAPS to try and address that issue of illegal foreigners, undocumented foreigners. And in fact, Johannesburg, if I'm not wrong, were basically the biggest host of those that are illegal and undocumented. And I think we need to explain also this issue of illegality. When people leave Zimbabwe, the first place they think of is where there's economic activity. And they'll then say to go to London, or the nearest one is Johannesburg. Is it easier to get to Johannesburg than to get to London? And that's how migration works. And I think it's important that the media starts understanding and capturing this thing. And the people move from Mzuza in Bulawayo. It's the west rural area of Zimbabwe, where there's no water and there's no electricity. And the first point, which is easier to get to, it's South Africa. And when they get to Limpopo, they don't stay. They just need to get money and a taxi to get to Johannesburg or to Tshwane, where there's possibilities of them to survive. And I think that's how migration would work. And that is why we end up with a lot of undocumented and illegal people. If you just, in Swaziland, you just cross the fence in Piet Retief. Is it still called Piet Retief? Mkondo, so I'm politically correct. You just jump the fence. You don't need anything. You don't even need to hide from police. Because even in history, the people of Swaziland would go across just to buy groceries and go back into Swaziland. So those are some of the issues of migration that will continue to be faced with. And it's a problem because it's also impact. But over and above, it's an issue of uncontrolled urbanization that constantly affecting us in Johannesburg. We are receiving numbers, almost 10,000, that are coming to Johannesburg, and I'm talking about South African citizens from all over other provinces in Johannesburg, and of course about 3,000 that are coming from other countries. Puts a strain because they create settlements which have not been planned for, that have not been planned because you have to plan for a settlement. There's bulk issues, there's infrastructure issues before you decide on establishing a settlement. But we are faced with a situation of informal settlements just cropping up all over the show. We're trying to reverse them, but it also needs a quick response from the side of the city, and that's what we are trying to improve on, so that once there's a threat of an invasion, we should be able to respond as much quicker before we have to deal with the courts. Otherwise, the courts will then say, you can't remove them, you must find them alternative accommodation. But part of the U20 is to discuss and debate those issues that are affecting local government and what solutions do they have. Does the city of Sao Paulo dealt with this matter and they've got certain lessons to share with us? They will do so in that platform. And this platform is critical for us because all the recommendations that come through the communique will then be taken over to the heads of state at the G20 to say these are the challenges of municipalities, and we think that national governments throughout the G20 countries, this is how you should respond based on what local mayors have raised in the U20. I thought I've answered your question, Kgaugelo. So immigration is an issue in itself, and we must find solutions. Street lights are on. We are trying our level best to ensure that throughout the entire city, our street lights are functional. At times you find that there's weaknesses between ourselves as City Power and ESCOM. We've got the infrastructure, it's an ESCOM supplied area, and there's no light. So we're trying to finalize service level agreements between the City Power and ESCOM, so that where ESCOM is unable to switch on, what do we do and what are the turnaround times in ensuring that we keep the city lights on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Morero. We're going to say the same things as if we copied each other's homework here, because the challenges facing cities are the same. But just to be specific to your question, Sisanda, about the lessons learned in Tshwane, and I think with that question, the question really is, how will we sustain this? If we believe that this is such an important initiative, how will we make sure that it's rooted in communities, that residents of the various cities will remember the hosting of U20, what's in it for them? I think the question really is there. I think in terms of the lessons that we learned in Tshwane is that event is just an event. There's never enough time to do everything that you need to do in an event. So what we did was to broaden our reach for partners. So we partnered with national government, with provincial government, with various cities, whether they're part of the C40, UCLG network or outside that all the Gauteng municipalities were involved, all the metros were involved, and other local municipalities were also involved, and Salga was involved. Because what we wanted was to agree on what is the message that we are taking to other leaders. But it was also important that we have legacy projects for the city of Tshwane residents in our case. Because if we didn't do that, it would have just meant that we hosted people in the city, but it had nothing to do with them. So the legacy projects that we had a school project, we had the greening project, we had a project for SMMEs, working with the agriculture and agro-processing sector, for instance, in our city. So the lessons learned for me was that we need to find ways to amplify the message by just reaching out to our partners, but also remember who we're doing this for, and those are the communities that we serve. And I mean, if you go to Garangua, there are trees that I went to personally plant when I was telling them about what U20 is about and why it's important, what are the issues, the impact of climate change that we're experiencing in our city. In Hammanskraal, they have trees. I use trees because that's a memorable symbol to them that it's in their yard. And then I would then talk to the communities as well. So I think for me, that was quite important as the lessons in terms of the lessons that we've learned, that when we have an opportunity to host an event like this, I mean, 2010 came, but we still have stadiums that when you look at them, you still remember 2010 happened. And so that's the lesson, that when we have this opportunity, we must always make sure that the memories are rooted in communities. The second one, Balentle, on the issues that you are raising, as Mayor Morero is saying, I mean, City of Tshwane is not unique from other African countries. So Mayor Morero in Tshwane, our population in 2011, it was just over 2 million. When you go to 2025, we have doubled. And those are the people that are accounted for. The people that are unaccounted for, we are told, actually maybe in millions in Tshwane. And those are the people that when we produce our IDP and say this is the level of investment we are putting in Region 1, it doesn't account for those people that are unaccounted for. So that's the reality that we live with. So I just wanted to agree with Mayor Morero on that. Now, what is it that we must do, and what is it that we are advocating for? In our case, what we are advocating for is an African city that we envision for ourselves, for our children, for our grandchildren. An African city that would be begging, but would be at the center stage of development in the world. And how do we do that? So in the city, we do have the short to long-term plans, a 10-year infrastructure development plan that we have costed. It's going to require over 58 billion in a space of 10 years. Because we're not going to get that 58 billion in a space of 10 years. That's why we are creative in terms of looking for financial solutions or partners that will help us to realize that investment. But what is clear to us is that there is no time where we say, no, we will wait until 35 years where we're going to have the 58 billion rands, that we need to participate in this discussion. We must shape the debate. We must shape the solutions that are going to benefit us. So in terms of the what are we doing to provide the conducive environment to create jobs and also make sure that businesses survive in our cities? In the city of Tshwane, we've launched an economic revitalization strategy in April. As council, we adopted it. And we didn't want to look too far. We said in the next 5 years, what is possible? That we are looking at an economic growth of 3.9% by 2029, acknowledging the reality that while our city was growing at 6% economic growth in 2011, in 2023, that was at 0.3%. And so then we had to stretch ourselves to say, how will we make sure, because we'll make sure that the economic growth is realized, because if we don't do that, the businesses won't survive, jobs won't be created. And so there are different plans that we have, including infrastructure development, including making our city easy to invest in, including availing our own assets. In fact, tomorrow, for those that may not be aware, we are hosting our investment summit where this plan will be put to the private sector, because we also realize we can't do this alone. We need private sector to be a partner to the city of Tshwane. But the good news for us, and I think just encouraging news as a last point, in the last quarter of when the employment or unemployment statistics were released, we then had, at least the statistics shows us that the 85% of jobs that were created in Gauteng in the last quarter, they came from the city of Tshwane. And those come from the investment that we nurtured. It came from the informal sector that we have been supporting. So it's not all doom and gloom. We are working towards creating this conducive environment, but we also realize that if we don't deal with the issues that Mayor Morero was raising here, because those are the secondary issues that want to be prioritized over these issues that are quite key in developing our cities. If we don't address those issues head on, then we won't be able to get where we want to be, which is the African city that we have envisioned, not only for ourselves, but for our children and grandchildren. I think I've covered the two that came to me. Thank you so much.
Okay, we're going to take the last round of questions. Do we have any follow-up questions? Okay, I think we're done. Thank you, colleagues, for coming. Thank you.